Yeah. So anything essentially that will trigger those emotions that are hard to regulate. So this could be areas in our life like our relationship. This could also be our financial gardens, for example. This could be our upbringing. This could be our family dynamics. This could be, like I was saying, unresolved trauma. And unresolved trauma is trauma that's happened to you as a child or in your younger age. It could have even happened to you as an adult. However, it was never addressed in a way for it to completely pass through you. So the way that we talk about emotion is that every single emotion has a root of coming from 4 different emotions. So there's just actually only 4 emotions, and everything else we experience stems from these 4. And that's anger, sadness, fear, and joy. And so if, let's say, you always feel guilty, or the person just, oh, you feel guilty, you're a mom, you're always feeling guilty, it's not enough, or you're always feeling guilty at work because you didn't do work, you know, so you're always just walking around with guilt. Guilt could be a combination of fear and maybe sadness, or it could even be fear and maybe anger. So depending on that person. But it's really important to understand this, because when things are going on in our lives and they're constantly triggering us, they're triggering our nervous system into protection mode, like I shared earlier. And when we have unresolved traumas also coming from our childhood, then we also have held on to these experiences from the perspective of a child. So we were talking about our childhood earlier. For example, we were talking about how we had, you know, certain dynamics with our fathers. And we also have to understand that the way that we received that was from the perspective of a small child. So I was 4 years old and 5 years old and 6 years old when I was having these conversations with my father. Today, I'm 44 years old. And so the way that I would receive that, the way I'd be able to interact with that is very different than how I was able to do that as a kid. And it's really interesting because as children, we are so dependent. We are so vulnerable because we're relying on these adults essentially around us to feed us, to clothe us, to put us in school, to do all these things for us and drive us around. And we don't actually have our own autonomy. We don't actually have that ability to make those choices for ourselves. And at the same time, we need to feel safe. So we need to feel safe, and we need to depend on the adults that are doing all these things for us. And oftentimes, unfortunately, not everyone gets to experience that. There's a lot of circumstances, a lot of people that I work with that had a very unsafe childhood and yet still relied on that adult to do all the things for them. And they were powerless. They weren't able to do anything about it. And so when we've learned that, what we actually have done is we've also trapped that in our body. We've actually trapped that emotion, that trauma in our body. And any energy that's trapped in the body, emotion being an energy, ends up creating a lot of, I want to say, a lot of pains or discomforts or lesions, as we call them, elsewhere in the body. And so we start to see the impact manifest in different tissues.